So this video will go through the vessel exam study guide and ways to prepare best for the vessel exam. So the first part of the study guide, so the first question on the test will be a fill-in-the-blank question where the question will say, this is the heart, and then you'll have blanks for these 5 words. So your blanks to fill in will be arteries to arterioles, to capillaries, to venules, and then to veins. The next 2 questions are blood vessel pathways. So the first pathway, and you don't need to know what an intravenous pyelogram is. It's just a injection of a contrast dye. So you're just following that path from the right median cubital vein to the heart, and then through the diaphragm to the left kidney, and then back to the heart. So the words that are above will be on that fill in the blank. And for most of them, for this pathway, you actually can use process of elimination. So for example, I go for, so your word bank's at the bottom, and I just kind of put a little generic one here. So going into the heart from the arm goes from a superior site, so above the heart. So into the heart from that direction would be the superior vena cava. Well, okay, try this one more time. Okay, there we go. So Control C. So into the heart, and I'm just going to place it here. So now for process of elimination, I can go ahead and cross that out. I'm just going to highlight it because that's easier. So leaving the heart, for going to the left kidney, you're going to travel through the entire aorta. So going from ascending aorta, so that's the initial leaving of the heart, then going through the aortic arch, so as it turns downward, and then lastly the descending aorta to complete the little arch that you see in the pictures a lot of times. Okay, so now I'm able to clear out these 2, as well as the aortic arch, which is here. So once the aorta passes through the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. So I'm going to copy and paste this one. So that's after the diaphragm. So I can put that one there. So that one is done. So far we've done a fair amount of the word bank just from process of elimination. So other ones you can eliminate. So you have your inferior vena cava. So the kidney is inferior to the heart. So as the blood is returning from the kidney, then it was returning from the kidney. So it's going through the inferior vena cava. So I'm going to place this right here and then highlight that. Okay, so next you have a few that you're going to have to remember where they are. So to get in and out of the kidney, you need an in is an artery, and the only one left that's an artery is renal artery. Kidney, there it is. And so to leave the kidney, you need it's sort of its opposite, so the vein of it, so renal vein. So I'm going to highlight that one as well. And this one. So the rest of them, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4 left that you have to know where to place them. So that's, majority of that word bank, and you're done for that question. So I placed the page numbers for the different editions of the book to finish up that pathway. But that one's not too much one you need to worry about, since you can do process of elimination with most of them. So the second pathway is tracking blood from the left ventricle to the right middle finger and then back to the right atrium. So leaving the left ventricle, of course, you're going through the aorta, and then going back to the right atrium, you're doing using one of the Vena Cavas, so you can cross those out. And then the rest of them are paying attention to the difference between whether or not it's an artery or vein. So definitely pay attention to that, as well as just following that path to be able to figure out where they are located. You might even be able to make an acronym for it so that it makes it easier for you to remember, or even just knowing where certain key places are and then building what goes in front of those and what goes behind them. So the next question, your 9 arteries in aorta that branch off the abdominal aorta, so the aorta that is below the diaphragm. So again, I give you page numbers to find where that information is, but below is the list on there. So there's your 1 through 9. The lumbar arteries will be labeled on the sheet. So now all you have to do is find an acronym or a way to remember the 4 that are above the lumbar arteries and then the 4 that are below it. So that's pretty simple. So the last 2 sections of this exam are a labeling, which has its own practice sheet, as well as the Capillary Dynamics, which not only has its own practice sheet, but will have its own video for going through that Capillary Dynamics PowerPoint that I also placed on Blackboard. So I'm just mentioning this again. For the questions that have word banks, I will detect a 1/4 point for spelling errors. And you may not think that a 1/4 point's that big of a deal, but they tend to add up for some people. So just pay attention when you have a word bank to make sure that you're having the same spelling. So I'm going to next move on to the labeling practice PDF. So for labeling for this exam, you have 2 special structures in the body to look at, as well as be able to label. So remember to pay attention that your A for this structure is on this side, and then your B through G is all located on this left side. So this structure is the circle of Willis. Again, the book has the same exact figure where you're able to find those vessel names and be able to have your order here. The labeling won't change, and so if you are able to kind of help you remember something in a particular order, if that helps you as well, then that'd be good in your case. So this is the circle of Willis, and then the other structure is the hepatic portal system. So that's your answer for number A. And then label the vessels that are labeled here. So 1's over here, and then your 2 through 4 are on the right side. And then list the 3 functions of the system. So the easiest way to find this is when they talk about the different vessel systems in the book, as well as even in the lab book. It gives a chart just for this system, and it actually says explicitly what the functions are. So there's actually 4 that can be pulled out of those paragraphs, but I only want 3. So the last section of this test deals with capillary dynamics, so there is a practice sheet for it. So the first section of the capillary dynamics has you identify what those different initials represent. So you have BP for blood pressure, and then HPI is hydrostatic pressure of interstitial fluid, and then your COPB is the colloid osmotic pressure of the blood, and then COPI, colloid osmotic pressure of the interstitial fluid. Again, these will be in the same order for the test, so you won't have to look too hard to find whether or not the B or I is subscripted on the acronym is in the same order. So on the capillary dynamics PowerPoint, it does go through the arrows either in or out of the capillaries that these pressures will push fluid. So from going through that PowerPoint, you'll be able to draw the arrows on your on the exam. So just kind of one way of thinking about it, even if you're having one of those brain moments and you don't remember which one goes where. The only one that draws fluid or moves fluid into the capillaries is the colloid osmotic pressure of blood. So here and here, because the proteins in blood are drawing fluid from the interstitial space, so from the extracellular space. The rest are pushing or drawing water out, so blood pressure pushes water out. The negative hydrostatic pressure pulls water out because it creates that suction, and then the proteins in the extracellular space are pulling water out. These are fluids, but water out from your capillaries. So only your COPB are the ones that will draw fluid into the capillaries. So that's the only one that will have an arrow into the capillary. The rest will be going away from the capillary. Also in the PowerPoint, it goes over how to calculate the forces. Again, the numbers will be different on the test, but as long as you understand that, as well as keep up with whether the arrows are going in and out of the capillaries, help you to calculate the different pressures. So each one we build on top of each other. So hydrostatic pressure is the effects of your blood pressure as well as your hydrostatic pressure of your interstitial fluid. So on the arterial end, your arterial osmotic pressure, COP for both your blood and the interstitial fluid. Venous end, hydrostatic pressure, again, blood pressure and hydrostatic pressure of your interstitial fluid, as well as the colloid osmotic pressures for blood and interstitial fluid for the venous osmotic pressure. So to calculate your net filtration pressure, it's a combination of the two pressures that act on the arterial end. Your net reabsorption pressure are the combination of the pressures that act on the venous end. And then the last part of the test, which end is arterial and which one is venous? So the X and Y up here. And how you determine that is through blood pressure, because it's the only number that changes significantly between the arterial end and the venous end. So for your arterial end, we have our blood pressure, that's 31, which is higher than our blood pressure is 6. So our X is our arterial end, our Y is our venous end. So you'll write that in the X and Y here. And then the last portion, justify your answers to question D, is that the X end has the higher blood pressure, so therefore it's the arterial end, and the Y has the lower blood pressure, so it's the venous end. So again, if you have any questions, just message me. But hopefully this makes it a little bit easier and gets it into your brain of what things will look like for the test.